we've been flirting with this one term for a long time when you're talking about printing money, the cost of money, and we've been flirting with the idea of inflation. So let's introduce inflation now. I'm a 5-year-old. Richin, what is inflation?
Sure. Let's dive into first a little formal definition of money, and then we can talk about inflation. So there's something called a monetary base. And the monetary base of a country is generally how much money is in the circulation of the economy. So that's generally inclusive of all the bills and coins that are in circulation that you and I hold in our wallets. That includes all the coins and bills that are in the vaults of central banks or just private banks. And it also includes the lines of credit that private banks have with the central bank because they at times need money or they have too much money so they can give it away to the central bank. So this is something called the monetary base. And after the monetary base, you have other formal definitions of money, which is M0, M1, M2, and M3. M0, not to get too invested in definitions, M0 is simply the total amount of money in an economy. M1 includes your checking accounts as well, including M0. M2 is M1 plus savings accounts and time deposits. And M3 is a combination of all of that, institutional money markets, and some repo agreements. We don't really need to touch upon the latter few, but it's a good notion to understand what monetary base is, the initial monetary base that we were describing. So what happens is over time, if the cost of money, and what is the cost of money? That simply, if I can go to the bank and get a loan for quite cheap, and then if I can go invest that money somewhere or create a shop or open up a restaurant or do something with it, and if I can somehow make more money in this sort of management process, I can go back to the bank and repay my loans and repay my interest. But then if we do it at a much larger scale, and if everyone in the economy does this, over time, you realize that there's just more money in the economy because I could borrow at a cheaper rate. I made more money, so I paid off my loans, and now I have this extra surplus of money. If I just did it infinitely in sort of this recursive pattern, I would just have an infinite amount of money. With an infinite amount of money, I could just purchase infinite number of goods. And so let's dial it back a little bit. Every time this happens, the purchasing power that people have increases quite rapidly. So you and I can just go and buy more goods, more services. And with that comes this supply process or the supply problem. The demand is sort of increasing. You and I have both have now this extra amount of money. We can either keep it under a bed or we can go buy some more goods and services. And every time that happens, goods and services are generally classified into some categories. But if they are finite or if they are rivalrous, you can get a potato, I can get a potato, but there are only a finite number of potatoes in the market. And if I'm driving to this market and buying potatoes, and if I buy up all the potatoes in that market, no one else has potatoes anymore. So what happens then, the shopkeeper next time is just going to charge me more for these potatoes because he doesn't want me buying up all of the potatoes. And he thinks he can make some profit by selling it for a few extra dollars. So now I don't buy all of the potatoes, but I buy most of them nonetheless. Now, another person goes and buys the additional potatoes that are there, but the shopkeeper said, oh no, I sold my potatoes for higher this time, so you have to buy it for that higher price as well. And over time, this increased the prices of all the goods and services in the economy. And that's this idea of inflation, where inflation is simply the price of goods and services in the economy relative to the past. So if I just had the same basket of goods that I was buying, how much could I buy it in December? And now how much can I buy it in January? And that's this idea of inflation. There are a variety of different ways of constructing how inflation can be computed. And the most interesting one that I like is this McDonalds Factor. And the McDonald's Factor is, what was the price of a quarter pounder last year? What is the price of a quarter pounder this year? The difference between that is simply the inflation.